if you don't believe evil is real, and this was in regards to a school shooting, on what can we do to help protect us and stuff like that. I'm like, everybody I talk to, if you don't believe evil is real, I can't help you at the point you're in your life. Because once you accept that evil is real, then you have to say, what am I willing to do to protect myself and my family from evil? It's a logical sequence. But if everything is an abstraction, there is no truth, it's subjective truth. Why are you mad if somebody shoots someone? If there's no objective truth that is wrong, and that somebody coming into a school killing innocent kids, if that's just living their truth, how are you mad at them for living their truth? If there is no objective reality or morality, then you have no business having a conversation about why you want to defend yourself, because why should you defend yourself against somebody who's just living their truth?
Now, all interviewers have their own style, and my style is to try to get to the point and to be intensely curious. And the key to interviewing is listening.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth, because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to our Sunday Sit Down, little conversation that we have on Sunday mornings with somebody that's kind of interesting. Today, it's going to be with Peter Johnson. He is the owner, the founder of Archway Defense. He's a friend of mine that I met 2 years ago at the SHOT Show, which is kind of funny because I went there to go meet gun people, and I turned out to meet some, I think, lifelong friends. I'm going to share some of his positivity today with you because I think we could all use it. It's been an interesting week. It's been a very uplifting week in a lot of ways because of what Donald Trump has been able to accomplish in this very short period of time. Ending 2 weeks of the Trump presidency is kind of an interesting time to be alive. What you hear in the intro is the immortal words and the unmistakable voice of Larry King, who I've tried to model a lot of my interviewing style after. He was the example that my father gave me of the right way to do interviews, how to ask questions and just wait for the answer, just to be intensely curious and to listen. And you'll notice there's something that comes up in this interview. There's no way around it. It's just the way it is. The folks that are sponsoring this interview are my friends over at Patriot Cooler. I'm very appreciative that they allow me to do these kind of things. They continue to support our program. They have for over 2 years now. And so we're going to say thanks to them real quick. If you guys want to find your own Patriot Cooler, you'll find me drinking it throughout the show. That's just what I do. I carry one everywhere. You can find yours at patriotcoolers.com. It's a great tool. It really is. It keeps your beverage hot or cold. However you start it, that's how it stays for a very long time, especially a cup of coffee that I usually have when I want to sit down and talk to a friend. If I go on a traveling trip, I bring a Patriot Cooler tumbler with me. If I go to the grocery store, we bring our Patriot Cooler hard cooler. We have the 50 quart sitting in the back of our minivan. It carries meat and eggs and cheese and keeps them cold so we can make extra stops because we've got kids. If you are in the same boat, if you want a long-term quality outdoor product that's going to stick around for several seasons, maybe for life, check out the Patriot Coolers website. And if you want one of the engraved ones that is part of the Kyle Seraphin Show collection, like you see over my shoulder up here on the wall, then that is how you find it. There's a link in the show description. The promo code KYLE, again, it's KYLE Kyle, saves you 10%. It's the same that you'd get if you were a law enforcement officer or a military veteran, but you don't have to put in your information and we get credit for the sale. So make sure you guys let them know that we sent you over. We really appreciate the folks over there. Let's get into this conversation, this sit down. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Again, one of my favorite people to talk to. I always feel better after I've had a long-term chat with my buddy Peter Johnson. So here we go. My guest today is Peter Johnson. He's the founder and the CEO of Archway Defense. He's a really good dude. He's a military veteran. He's a former federal law enforcement officer. So we're going to have a chat about safety, about evaluating threats, and about why he's such a positive guy. He's probably the most positive guy. Peter, welcome to the program.
As always, thank you for having me.
I got to tell you, I needed this today because it's been one of those weeks. I don't know if you're having one as well, but I'm exhausted and I just wanted to talk to a friendly face and a friendly voice.
I think every week you need to, for everybody's own mental health, you need to get around your MAG, your mutual mutual assistance group of like-minded people that build you up and aren't trying to tear you down.
I'll take it. I need it, so I'll take it. Let's talk about who you are as a person. Why don't you walk me through kind of your origin story? I don't even know what year were you born in?
I was born in the 80s. We'll leave it at that.
You're going to leave it at that. Are you older or younger than me?
I'm older than you. Yeah.
Okay. You sure?
But I'm taller, so it makes sense.
Well, that's definitely true. Yeah. Tell people how tall you are.
Um,
You're an imposing figure in real life.
Yeah, I'm just a smidgen under 6'5", and a petite 255, 260, depending on how many Chipotle burritos I had that day. But
yeah, that checks.
Very petite. No, so born as an 80s kid, born in Minnesota. My father was a Vietnam vet, and as soon as you hear that, people are like, "Oh, fighting in the jungles." Like, I'll send you a photo. He was actually played at Pepperdine. He was All-American tennis player. If you go to courts in Pepperdine University right now in Malibu, Court 1 has his name above the court. Him and Lansdorp, which, yeah, absolute tennis legend. So growing up on the tennis court. So anyway, he was got drafted in the Navy right before he's supposed to go on the circuit, and the professional circuit. The guys he was playing with went to Wimbledon and everything else. And so he joined the Navy so he didn't have to go into the Army. And his job in the Navy was actually to teach an admiral tennis. So I've got my favorite photo of him. Thank God he's still alive, but he's playing tennis on the flight deck, I believe, of the Yorktown in the South China Sea with the admiral.
What?
Wild. Like, just surreal, the stories that guy has. But yeah, born in Minnesota, did what kids do, went to school, and then 9/11 happened.
Do you have any siblings? You have any siblings?
I am one of 7, actually.
I feel I should know that. I don't know that about you, but where do you fit in the rank of 7?
Third to the youngest.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a big Catholic family, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, about 14 years apart from oldest to youngest. So still really close, amazingly close with all the siblings. Again, thank God my folks are still alive, so we still get to spend time with them.
That's awesome. And then when did you join the Air Force?
Right after 9/11. So the attacks happened. I always had a calling to join the military of some sort. And then 9/11 happened, and the easiest base I could get on was the Air Force because I knew guys that were on the base, and they could get me a meeting with the recruiter. Because any GWAT vet, post 9/11, you remember all the bases were shut down. It was really hard to get on. And then basic training slots were frozen because we didn't know if we were going into World War III, if attacks were happening. So just pragmatically, I was like, let's go to the Air Force. I probably should have thought more through it, but...
What did you want to get into in the Air Force?
So, man, I wanted to be...
What did you want to get into, and then what did you get into?
Yeah, so the great question. I wanted to be a pilot, and this is the danger of taking someone else's advice. Someone once told me I'm too tall to be a pilot, and I didn't find that out that was a lie until after I already enlisted.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful who you listen to. But everything worked out for how it did. So I went in for Air Base Ground Defense on the security forces side of it. Insert joke here. We had butlers and Wi-Fi while we deployed. It was pretty cool.
Very cool. Horse butlers.
Yeah, just very fancy, like Alfred. I always joke on the range, we didn't have to do mag changes or reloads. Alfred would do them for us. Yeah. A lot
of Army guys, they're believing this right now.
I guaranteed. Marine Corps is like, I don't think it's true. I hope it's not true. But right. I wouldn't be shocked if you had like an AFSC or what everyone else calls an MOS for magazine change butlers in the Air Force. So I did 02 to 08 in the Air Force. Got out, went back to school, finishing up my degrees in criminal justice law enforcement. So I got a couple degrees in that. My senior research, or my capstone project, was actually on the radicalization of Somali youth in Minneapolis. Very lighthearted capstone project.
Seems actually very applicable these days.
Yeah, at the time. So I was going in Minnesota's always been pretty liberal, pseudo communist Marxist. Something's going on there, but the professor was not impressed with it when you going through trying to get your idea approved for your capstone. I'm like, look, I don't know about X, Y, and Z, but this side of it, I actually have access to this information. So can I just do it on this topic? During that time, I worked part-time at a police department in Minnesota, just for 2 years, very brief, right after the military. Part-time, 38 hours a week. Part-time. You needed this PD needed a 4-year degree to be sworn, full-time sworn. So was with them for 2 years, which was still a great experience. Ran their armory for a little bit. One of the SWAT guys transitioned out, got promoted to a different agency, took another job, and they didn't have anyone for the armory. Well, I've already run an armory in the military, so they let me as a part-time clown take over their armory and take care of all the weapons for the PD, which was kind of cool as a new guy, the FNG. And then the financial collapse happened, and I was probably third on the list on seniority. So there's only a couple people below me. And our chief at the time, this guy named Bob Hawkins, phenomenal human being. Like, no leader's perfect, you know that. But this guy, I'll never forget the chief. Every Friday, he would send out an email to the entire PD, and it would just be a voice message every single Friday, without a doubt. He's like, "Happy Friday. This is Chief Bob Hawkins. Just want to give you a wrap up of what we did this week." And he would tell everything, like what court cases they were working on, staffing issues, and like he would just lay everything out. Super transparent, good leader. But when we were talking to him, he said, "Hey, we don't know how bad the cuts are going to get during the financial collapse. They already started laying off like their intel analyst and a couple of these other staff positions in the PD. And I still had a couple people between, but I started applying for jobs. A friend hit me up and said, the Air Marshals are hiring." So I'm like, okay, well, we did the flyaway security teams in Iraq, which is an Air Marshal mission. At the end of the day, it is. So I applied, and that went through the federal process, similar but different to the FBI. I mean, PT tests, medical tests, interviews, blah, blah. And then background, that took about a year, and then got a slot for the Air Marshal Academy in Artesia, New Mexico, which some people call the Paris of New Mexico.
Who are those people?
I've never met them, but I've heard that some people call it that. It's a horrible place. Graduated FTP 1 and then went out to Atlantic City, New Mexico, or pardon me, Atlantic City, New Jersey. And that's where the actual like Air Marshal Academy is at after you graduate FLETC.
A lot of people actually do confuse New Mexico and New Jersey when they see them from the sky.
I'm going to get so many hate comments on this. Parts of New Jersey are absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's true. Actually called the Garden State, but everybody knows Jersey from like Jersey Shore and Newark. The worst aspects of Jersey are what Jersey's known for. When you get away from it, it's actually a beautiful state. You just have to get away from it. And I think it was the garden of New York City. Yeah. I mean, it really was. And it is a very green and lush state once you get away from the industrial kind of garbage on the east side of the state. Yeah. So
you know what, Peter, though, that seems like that's the entire East Coast. I feel like, is it not? It's like all of the East Coast would be great if not for like some of the East Coasters, and certainly like all of the cities have really kind of made the East Coast not tolerable.
Yeah. Mismanagement. People can blame the population, too many people, but also just mismanagement of those cities, because some of those cities could be really amazing, but kind of like Chicago, same thing. I think Chicago could be one of the greatest cities in the U.S. You have water, you have sports, you're right in the heartland. You have for business, you have train access, big airports at least, but the corruption and incompetence destroys that place.
Truly. All right, so you got moved to New Jersey and...
Yeah, graduated Top Gun out of the Air Marshal Academy. Not like Tom Cruise Top Gun, like shooting Top Gun. And then...
dwell on that for a minute, because this is my personal experience, but FAMs, Federal Air Marshals, so we'll call them FAMs from here on out, folks, because that's what we call them. They're shooters. And they're really, really good shooters. Like, it's a really big deal to be a good shooter. That is not the case in the other federal services. Maybe Secret Service has that culture, but I don't know anybody else that shoots like FAMs. At least they maybe used to.
Yeah, and I can't say for what they're like now, because obviously, especially the last 4 years, the degradation of hiring practices, everything else. But when we were there, yeah, FAMs are phenomenal shooters. They invest significant amounts of resources and talent into turning you into the best law enforcement marksman. I would say, as a sample size, I don't know, I've never met another sample size of law enforcement or Fed that has a higher standard and consistently outperforms on shooting. It's a phenomenal program.
Why?
Well, great question. Well, one is you don't have any backup. So that is a huge element of the job. And it becomes very real when you do the job, that if you're on a flight, and we won't go into the con ops, but if you're on a flight and you have to do work on that flight, no one else is coming. You can't ask for more cars. You can't ask for backup. There's whatever you have on that flight is it. And it's quantitative number of rounds, which we won't go into how many that is, but there's more people on the plane than there are rounds. And obviously, if everybody on the plane's attacking you, our intel failed on so many levels. But when you're on the aircraft, if you don't succeed at your mission when you activate, the protocol is pretty dark on what the backup plan is, because the government made the commitment that we will never allow another plane to hit a building. So you can read into that what the logical sequence of events would be if the air marshals on that flight fail. But it's not good. So
Would it be fair to say that you've got some NDAs that prohibit discussing that much further?
Yeah, I don't want to toe that line just in case. But if anybody
so
wants
people
to
understand why you're being vague.
Yeah, if anyone wants to pull up the old interweb, you might be able to find that out. But if you just sit down and quietly think about, well, if we can't get more people on the plane, what else could we do? And you'll find the conclusion, unfortunately, pretty quick. So the danger of a true no-fail mission, if you activate, you cannot fail, period. Then the proximity to so many innocent people in that linear environment of that tubular assault, you can't afford to miss, because you're going to be hurting. If you're off by an inch, there's a chance that you're going to be hurting somebody on that flight who it was your job to protect them. So the intolerance, everybody wants to say intolerance is bad, but I think the intolerance for poor shooters was visceral. Like, it was, if you were a bad shooter, you were mocked relentlessly if you didn't already lose your job. So you had to shoot every quarter to keep your job.
Which are actually standards.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it. Couple phases throughout the academy, you knew that if you didn't hit this mark, you're done. Like, you have to make your scores, and our minimum standards for qualification are higher than the all federal law enforcement standards for firearms instructors. So our minimum standard of qual is higher than the highest standard within every other branch of government.
That's an interesting background to come out of. Okay, so tell me about getting to the job. Where'd you get assigned?
The New York field office.
Is that prestigious? Do people want that?
No. Not even a little bit.
Okay, good.
There is a sign in the New York field office in the main room. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. The classic Frank Sinatra song, I think.
Right.
But they took that to heart. Our first SAC, day one on the job, we're all in our suits. We're showing up. We just graduated. Shows up and he's like, "You will serve 20 years to life in the New York Federale." I'm like, did this guy just say Federale? He has since left the agency, thankfully. Horrible, absolutely horrible. But he's like, he would not sign a transfer And he made it very clear. He's like, if you're here for 20 years to life. You're not leaving.
Why?
Because ego, stupidity. I mean, the guy was a moron, absolute moron. No idea how he got the job. I think he was a Secret Service holdover. What most people don't know is when after 9/11, the Air Marshals have been around for over 50 years. It's not a new program at all. But after 9/11, they ramped it up significantly to a number that I believe is still classified or something. Doesn't matter. But they significantly increased the number. Well, they needed middle management, or so they thought, to fill that surge force. So what they did is they went to the Secret Service, and all the rejects from the Secret Service who they wanted to cycle out, they put them in charge of the Air Marshal program. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, our SAC was one of those rejects. And it showed.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the day-to-day look like doing that job?
I mean, I've heard, and I won't go into what guys on the ground are still telling me because it does change, but I can only speak with certainty to what I did for 5 years. And you would fly 4 to 5 days a week pretty consistently. So maybe it was New York to Middle East. We'll just say that generically. On your Monday, wake up, get your intel brief, do your crew brief or your team brief. So you read your intel packets, all that stuff. Then you get your group together. You go to the airport. If you're doing surveillance on somebody, as you're very aware of, there'd be times where we'd have surveillance. So you have your surveillance doing what you do. And then you board the flight with all the other passengers. And you fly to the Middle East for the sake of argument. And so Tuesday morning, whatever that Tuesday is for you, you'd land in the Middle East, and then there's actions on the ground that you have to take. You get done with those, go to the hotel, try to get a workout in maybe, or just sleep, wake up, work out, eat, and then you're back at the airport. And then you fly back. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And then you do it again.
For years.
For years. For literal years.
Do you see a lot of guys do 20 years there and guys and gals? Do they retire out of that job, or do people transfer to other jobs?
Most of I'm going to preface this. Most people transfer out. The people that have held on longer, they had to have got a ground-based assignment of some sort for sustainability. Flying for 20 years, unless there's something like wrong in your head, I don't know how you could sustain that. If you had kids, I mean, I legitimately would wake up in foreign countries and have no idea where in the world I was because your circadian rhythm is so far off. I would have to take the hotel placard and put it right next to my phone. So when my alarm went off, you wake up in a panic. And it happened a lot where you're like trying to figure out where in the world. It's like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? It's where in the world am I? And you're trying to figure it out like you're an insomniac. So part of actually, the Air Marshals commissioned a sleep study, and I think it was public. We'll have to pull that up. A sleep study through Harvard. Harvard Medical did a sleep study on this. And the day, I believe it was the day it was supposed to come out, leadership got it first, and then it got postponed for a month or two. And then...
Yeah, I could see this not looking good.
No. It messes with your sleep quite a bit. If you weren't fit, if you didn't have like a really good fitness routine before you started, you would be a heart attack waiting to happen. It's a pretty rough job. Now, that being said, I'm talking about a lot of the negatives. Some of the best human beings I ever worked with in my life worked in that office with me. So that was the contrast. That you can put up with a lot of BS when you're around good people. It makes it that much easier.
You have a very specific, I don't want to call it a sense of humor. Your persona is very positive. And maybe we can talk about how you and I met on completely randomly. Like, we've only met in person twice. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
It's been at SHOT Show both times, right?
Right. Yeah. You want to maybe run people through that? Anyway, I want people to have the disclosure, like, we've met in person. We've spent some time together. But I feel like we have a lot more of a close personal relationship than people who have just been in the same place 2 times.
I think it's very similar but different backgrounds, very similar mindsets, which make it very easy. But then also we communicate pretty frequently and it's not on podcast stuff. It's just on life. Like, how's the family? How's the kids? Hey, check out this gun I just built or whatever.
Some
But
of it
yeah,
is the way that you carry yourself, though, which is not the same as a lot of people that I meet. I meet a lot of people sort of like incidentally to what I do, and you're very specifically positive and thoughtful. And I'm curious where that comes from, because it may not be unique, but it is specific.
So, one, I appreciate that. I legitimately do. I don't think I know I wasn't always this way. I often fought with a too heavy of a pessimism in my life. Not nihilism by any means, but just a little too pessimistic. So through, like, I want to try to become the best version of myself. So part of that was realizing that at the center of all my problems, there I am. So,
oh, good.
Right. So if I work on myself and try to become, actually, one of these came out of one of our instructors, and he's still operational in a different unit. So I'll leave his name out, but we'll just call him John for the sake of argument. John, one day we were on the range training, just instructors working on ourselves, like grinding ourselves into the pavement to make ourselves better. And he looked at me after a rep and he's like, I'm not the best version of myself. And that hurts. Like, wow, the awareness on you is, but the fact that I haven't reflected on, am I the best version of myself? And that his honesty and openness, and this is one of the baddest fucking guys on the planet. Like, this dude, legit. He would work well in circles that you're familiar with. Phenomenal human being. But it was that brutal honesty and even openness, willing to share that point of, like, I know I'm not the best version of myself, so I need to improve myself. And that was many years ago, probably 2016 something. But going through that self-development, I read a lot. I listen to a ton of books. I mean, my Audible collection is probably over 200. When my wife and I moved in together after we got married, she joked that I moved more books than any other thing I owned. I love books. So I try to read as much as I can. That picked up actually on my first deployment. I just started crushing books in my off time, because after you work out, after you eat, there's nothing else to do. You can go work out again, but you're too tired. So just reading books. A couple of the books that have done really well for me, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And it's not just about money. It's about a rich lifestyle, building the life that you want. And Napoleon Hill, for anyone who hasn't read his book, it instantly clicked with me on, if I change me, which is the only thing I can control, my life will get better. So a couple of the books I'd credit with it: Napoleon Hill, Simon Sinek's Start With Why, which is why do we do what we do? And when you reflect on that, it brings clarity to your life, which I like. The Four Agreements, phenomenal book. If you've ever read it, we have agreements. All of us have agreements that we make with ourselves, and some of them we don't acknowledge. But one of the reasons I've tried to slow down my speech was in one of the agreements of the book, Four Agreements: be impeccable with your speech. That was a new agreement, to be impeccable with your speech. And that's standard for how we communicate. You're a brilliant communicator, but for those that maybe struggle with communication, being impeccable with your speech is a brilliant bar to set for ourselves. And it forces you to do self-reflection on, am I the best presentation of myself? And that's challenging. Another great book.
What's fun? I tell people that when I got into doing what I'm doing right now, that I knew no matter what I said, I was going to be accountable for every round I sent down range. I mean that metaphorically, of course, in the sense of saying things. So I try to also be very precise. And what's funny is if somebody who says something and I don't know that I said it, because it happens, you say enough words, you forget that you said it. You shoot enough targets, you don't remember what the target looked like.
Yeah.
But if somebody says, hey, you said this on this day, and I can go, yeah, that sounds like something I would say. I don't specifically remember saying it, but you're probably right. And the upside is that I stand by that thing, even though I don't remember saying it, because I knew that I'd be accountable for it. So I can stand by it right now, because I could just go, oh yeah, well, one, if I said it, I agree with it. But two, that sounds like something I would agree with anyway.
Yeah.
Because I just say things I believe and agree with.
And here's
so be impeccable is a very short way of saying that.
Yeah, but being impeccable, that when you self-audit, or when I self-audit how I speak, being impeccable, man, that standard is tough. And I fail at it, honestly. I'm not
sure.
I'll admit I fail at that, but the more I work at it, the better my relationships get, not just in business, interpersonal, and the more fun I have, is because, like you said, that sounds like me. I probably said it. I always joke with my wife, I could never run for politics because the first press conference, I'd have to say, I'm going to go down a laundry list of all the horrific things that I've said so you don't have to do your work. I have called people the most vulgar things on the planet. Some of them still deserve it, but maybe I shouldn't have said that. Would I take it back? Probably not, because at the time they probably needed it. But the even worse than that, I think, is being vague or another word for it, building ambiguity so no one really knows what you're talking about. And I think that's disrespectful to a meaningful conversation, to the other person.
I knew you read, but I never asked you that.
I love reading. I mean, I was crushing audiobooks today on Ludwig von Mises, The Systems of Credit, on the Austrian School of Economics. I know. My wife, she's killing me. She jumped in the car and I had on, here, I'll pull it up. I had on, I believe the book is Quantum Supremacy, on subatomic particles. Because if I find something that even remotely sparks my interest, I want to read about it. I want somebody who knows way more about these topics than I do, and I'd love to hear their perspective. And that trying to stay, and I'm using the phrase infinitely curious. I'm trying to stay infinitely curious, which also helps suppress my own ego. Because when you're infinitely curious, the bedrock of that belief is that I don't know everything.
It's humility.
Exactly. And then my ego gets smashed because I want to kill that thing every day I can. But then the upside is I learn more. Yeah, here, that book was, she was looking at me sideways. Quantum Supremacy, and I apologize if this author's watching this, Miko Kukui. Please comment below if I butchered that so horribly. I apologize. But
that means you've been in this space too long. If you can say that, yes, put it in the comments.
Yeah, put it in the comments, because here's the thing. I know I butchered that guy's name, but his book is phenomenal, and it's on quantum supremacy. I actually wanted to learn about the subatomic particles, because there's this thing called incoherence. And if you're a physicist, I apologize if I'm getting something wrong, but these are cliff notes of it. So they found out that subatomic particles, when they're in coherence, that means they're working, we'll say they're working together, that they're in a fixed time and place in the universe. What we just found out less than a decade ago, and I believe it was because of the CERN collider, was that when particles are in what they call superposition, a particle is in multiple places at once within time and space, which we didn't think was possible. That has crushed our belief, or not our humans' belief, of what particles are, because a particle can't be in multiple places at the same time, the same particle.
At least not as we would commonly define it.
Correct. And that changed. So that concept of a breakthrough was fascinating to me, that there's the quantum entanglement where they actually get together. And this is at the core of quantum computing, which again, so going down that rabbit hole, but for another day. So yes, I love reading and being infinitely curious.
It's a great quality to have. I imagine it makes you a better instructor. You didn't stay as an air marshal forever. Why don't you walk us through, because you're obviously wearing a hat for your company, and I don't actually know what pushed you into that. So some of
Yeah,
this is me just asking questions of a friend to find out more about you.
yeah. So there, like everything in life, there's no one piece. I would oversimplify it if I said this one thing did everything. But the earliest tipping point, another great book by Malcolm Gladwell, the earliest tipping point I can point back to was I was actually in Istanbul at the time. I was sleeping. And like you're used to having multiple phones. So I had a stack of phones next to me in the bed or on the nightstand. And one of the phones rang. Picked it up. I'm like, yep, Peter. And it was a woman's voice talking about a bomb. And that wouldn't be shocking in Istanbul because of the conflict with certain elements. Bombings are not uncommon as they are here. And so I thought there was a bomb at the airport. So I'm going through my list as a team leader. Okay, what do we need? Do we need, is the airport closed? Do we need to rally something? Like, what's going on? Well, actually, as I start waking up, I realized the voice is my mother. My mom called me. She was at a church in Minnesota, and somebody put a pipe bomb on the door while she was at adoration. Which, this town is like less than 3,000 people, just microscopic town. And that kind of, it woke me up a lot quicker. But then on the flight back, I'm pretty sure on the flight back, I had that moment of, okay, I'm traveling all over the world, doing what I'm doing, but couldn't I maybe, with the limited time I have left, help out the people in my own country? Which is a crazy thought. And that started going down the road of exploring the idea of jumping in and starting a business.
I want to talk about, before we get to starting the business piece of it, which it requires a tremendous amount of faith in the world, in God, in yourself to go do. So I want to talk that in a bit as well. I want to know about the whistleblower activity, which I did not know until very recently about you, but it is another thing that we tend to have in common. Yeah. And you identified something a long time ago. You shared me some. So folks, just for your awareness, I've seen documents to validate this statement. And I don't use the word whistleblower indiscriminately, as people will know. Talk about what it means and how you became one.
Yeah. Well, I can't even say I became one. I attempted to become one. No one would talk to me, which is even
That's
more
becoming one. That's pretty standard.
Okay. I don't know anything about the whistleblower. So you're probably, you're way more, I know you're way more familiar, but no, there was, and I think, let me just make sure that this is open source before I say it out loud. And a lot of this came out with Tulsi Gabbard recently. So I'm pretty sure.
Start with the acronym, folks. We're talking an acronym right now of SMC, Special Mission Coverage, which is specific, and that's been discussed openly quite a bit. So I don't have any special read-in, so I could talk about that. SMCs are what?
Yeah, so SMCs, it's exactly what it sounds like, special mission coverage. And the fact that it has been discussed, Tulsi Gabbard was targeted by these operations, and what they used to be was a logical surveillance package going after known terrorists and their affiliates, which totally makes sense. So you get a packet, and that packet might have suspected terrorist or known terrorist 1, 2, 3. And that suspected terrorist or known terrorist would be moving from point A to point B. And the theory was, we are not going to let that suspected or known terrorist get on a flight without a team there to cover him. And this was generally pushed by the FBI, and they would be running lead on it. We would just be a small piece of the equation in that intermodal transportation network, so that when they got to the States, that the FBI would take over and do what they do, which is more on your side.
Which was essentially my side of the coin. That being said, it was also sort of people that couldn't be interdicted because they hadn't committed any action, but they were known to be adherents to an ideology, that there was enough threat behind there that you didn't want them to be running around. So it's that intermittent space, right? That space between
Correct.
ideology and action.
And
That's where the Air Marshals took it.
Yeah, and the danger of counterterrorism is you're going after people that might not have a criminal record, right? Because
Right.
if they've never committed a crime in the U.S., they don't have a criminal record, but maybe they are a sworn member of Al Qaeda. So, but they've never committed a crime other than material support for terrorism or something else, but they've never been convicted or charged. So anyway, we would get these packets, and we'd do the missions, and it was so normal on what you're reading, and it would make sense. And anybody in law enforcement, it would make sense to say, this person has done this, and this agency or this entity said they have intel that they've been involved in these things. Okay, so we're going to go put a team on them. Well, it shifted. There's something in the ops tempo that shifted, and it was dramatic, where the packets started coming for Americans, which wasn't, that by itself wasn't enough to warrant concern, because there were radicalized ISIS-inspired people communicating. So, but it was Americans, no criminal record, and no nexus to terrorism. Nexus, fancy word for no connection to terrorism. They had no inspiration, ideology, or ideation, nothing at all to do with any threat to the U.S. And then we were getting packets on them. And for the purpose of this and everything else, I'll never say any of those names out loud, but that was weird. And then you'd call, there was a process to get more information on that mission, and you'd basically get told to pound sand. Like, don't worry about it, just do your job. You're like, well, who is this person, and why are we putting counterterrorism assets on this person? And you're told basically, go pound sand. There's nothing, like, do your job.
What year was that?
I'd have to look back, but it would be 13, 14-ish, give or take. So after a couple of these, I went to my immediate supervisor, and I'm like, hey man, like, what's going on? This doesn't make sense. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you. They came down from the channels, and that's what it is. So I asked permission to go above him and talk to his boss, follow the chain of command, right? And that guy was like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. They're just coverage. I'm like, okay, can I go up to...
Yeah, were they troubled?
No, like, not really. I mean, guys in the office were, because guys in the office were seeing the same thing, and they're like, yeah, this is weird. Like, what's going on? It doesn't make sense, because when you're so used to following known, quote, bad guys, right, or actual legitimate bad guys, to get a non-bad guy who you can't, there's nothing on this guy. He's just a normal American with no criminal history, pays his taxes, lives with his wife and kids. You're like, has a job, not communicating with terror networks. It just blew my mind, like, absolutely blew my mind.
Could you assess any commonalities?
I can only speak to the ones I saw, right?
Uh-huh.
The only commonality is that they were publicly outspoken politically. And not in a condoning violence or trying to insurrectionists or anything. It was just, this guy is doing the wrong thing, and I don't agree with it. I'm simplifying that type of speech, but it was blatantly apparent free speech against a political opposition person or persons,
like
or entity.
Political dissidents in America. We're sort of for that, I think.
Yeah, it's actually a really healthy thing. If you and I are rival politicians, and I think you have a bad idea, I should speak openly about how bad of an idea I think you have. And then you should speak openly about how bad of an idea you think I have. And then the voters will decide whose idea is better. It's really easy.
That's very novel.
We should try that sometime. Can somebody write that down? So I followed the chain of command all the way up, asking somebody, help me understand the why behind this. Why are we doing it? Why does this make sense? And I got basically either I don't know, none of your business, or go pound sand, or combination thereof. So then our director at the time had a email box. So you had open door policy. He was in DC, I was in New York, so you couldn't physically get to him. But part of the open door policy was you could always write directly to his actual inbox an email. So I did. And I titled the email Politically Motivated SMCs. And I, without giving any classified or sensitive information, I simply said, there's something wrong. I don't want to put it in this email. But if you're reading this, you know what I'm talking about. There's something wrong here. And if I'm not mistaken, I even brought up the concern from the agency's perspective and the traveling public, which we are serving, that it could degrade the trust of our mission set, where the American people thought that our job was to protect them from another 9/11 or hijacking or terrorist incident within the transportation network of the U.S. And nothing. That waited, didn't even hear a peep back, like, yep, we got it, nothing. So it was from my .gov to his .gov, nothing. I'm like, okay. So I sat on it a while, and then I reached out to a congressman. And he emailed the congressman from my .gov, told him who I was. Same thing. I can't say stuff in this email. I'm asking for a classified meeting where I can openly speak, but I can't put details in this email. But I'm telling you, there's something wrong, and it's within regards to this. Nothing. And I've actually met this congressman. He got primaried, or no, he lost his election. He was a coward, absolute coward. Shocking, right?
It's appalling. Yeah, who knew?
Yeah, never met one. So seeing that, there's another good book, by the way, law enforcement. You and I have talked about this, Ordinary Men. The book, yep. Ordinary Men, Police Reserve Battalion 101. I didn't read that until after I got out, but it's about just following orders, the danger in just following orders. And that's how you get to a point where you're running people out of a village and putting them in a ditch and shooting them in the back of the head. The takeaway from the book, that's ultimately what following orders without questioning them, because they told me to do it, that is the final destination of where you go if you have no moral, ethical, or legal guide that is bigger than somebody telling you what to do. But yeah, so I attempted to be a whistleblower through the proper channels, documented everything, reached out to a congressman, and was basically like, yeah.
Why do you think there was no push or no reception at that time?
None. I mean, what's sad is the fact that by the way, Tulsi Gabbard, I was out when this started, but Tulsi Gabbard's incident is identical. It's really identical to the MO, if you will, of these politically motivated SMCs, or politically motivated SMCs. I can't find a better way to put it. And that most people in DC seem not to care that we're weaponizing the counterterrorism mechanism of the U.S. for a current lieutenant colonel, a former presidential candidate, a former congresswoman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're putting her on the same
and maybe
level.
A future cabinet member.
We're putting her on the same level as a bomb maker coming out of Yemen. Like, it blows my mind. Absolutely. It's heartbreaking, because when you join, and like we've talked about your path through the Bureau, joining for the right thing to try to do the right work and help people put bad guys away. And when you see that isn't the mission set because of the corruption, incompetence, cowardice within the bureaucratic permanent DC, it's pretty disheartening. It's sad.
Yeah, it's a sobering moment, I guess, to kind of eat that up. So was that one of the reasons why you ended up leaving?
Yeah, definitely one of them. One of them was simply New York was horrible. I mean, it was absolutely horrible place to live. Go visit there if you want, or maybe not anymore, because it's until they get that place locked down from a crime perspective. New York is fantastic to visit for like 48 hours, but 5 years, it was too much. And then the ability to transfer was just not happening. So yeah, multiple factors coming up, and then ultimately, just what would happen if I tried something different, and so I did.
I love it. Let's take a quick breather, and we're going to come right back. We're going to talk about the next phase where you got into doing some of the work you're doing right now, which I think is fascinating, and also where you've kind of unlocked this special personality trait you have, this unique positivity, which like I said, I gravitate towards. So be right back with Peter Johnson. So we're going to take a little break right now and say thanks to the folks that support this program. I hope you guys are enjoying what we have to say so far. Stick around for the second half. Before you do get into it, it's going to be Patriot Coolers again, the folks that are sponsoring this program. Patriot Coolers, the interviews are supported with limited interruption by a single sponsor on our Sundays, and this one's is patriotcoolers.com. They are the longest serving sponsor of the Kyle Seraphin Show. You can find them at patriotcoolers.com. You can use my promo code. It's just my name, 4 little letters that save you 10% if you spend $50 or more, which if you're like me, you start piling stuff into your cart and you're like, oh, that's pretty easy to get. I'd rather spend money on extra product than I would on shipping. You might as well get that free shipping deal at $50 or more. If you buy any of the bigger products, that's easy. But if you buy one of the smaller ones, buy one for someone you love. I'm not asking anybody to spend money they don't have, and certainly don't go out there and get it if you don't need it. But if you're in the market for something that's going to sit on your desk, you're going to drink that coffee and listen to the Kyle Seraphin Show first thing in the morning, then go ahead and do so with a Patriot Cooler, just like I do every single day. And honestly, they're the easiest people in the world to recommend. They're just a great product. I've never had anybody say, hey, man, what are you doing? Steered me wrong. Nobody gets steered wrong at Patriot Coolers. Let's get back into the interview. Make sure you use that promo code as you guys see it. And let's go talk a little further with my friend, Peter Johnson. All right, we're back with Peter Johnson. We're going to be talking about the transition from working in a government job and that leap into the private sector. Was it a leap of faith? Would that be fair?
Yeah, it was.
No, don't let me put words in your mouth.
No, if you're thinking about an entrepreneur route, and I hate that word. Actually, I don't like that word entrepreneur because it's so social media influenced hype kind of, I'm an entrepreneur. It is miserable. To start your own business and try to make it is one of the dumbest things you could try to do. It is absolutely horrific. It is miserable. Yeah, I've had a ton of fun at times, but most people don't see the other side of it, where you're wondering what the hell you did. You question everything about your life, on what your belief systems are. It's a really tough road. And if you're not willing to work for free for many years, don't even think about it.
Yeah, you can't count the hours, can you?
No. I was having a lunch today with another Fed, he'll go nameless, great guy. But he said, man, you work a ton. I'm like, you have to work a lot harder in the private sector to hustle. Just being honest, it's a lot more work. And if you don't love it, if you couldn't imagine dying doing what you're doing, you probably shouldn't do that. Because if you're just doing it for a paycheck or money, you're going to get so burnt out and you won't care anymore. And then you'll pull the ripcord, whatever that is for you. Go back, find a different job or whatever. But leap of faith. When I started it, the hype, the excitement of starting a business, it carries you for a little while, and you think you're so much smarter than you are. At least I'll speak for myself. I thought I was so much smarter than I was in business. I thought I could figure it out. I got this. I ran the spreadsheets. I'm whatever. And then the train of reality just right in your face. You're like, okay, there's a lot I don't know about this at all. I mean, on so many aspects, because you have to wear every hat, and people have talked about this, where you're the janitor, you're the accountant, you're the sales guy, you're customer support, your product development, you're everything. You're everything and nothing all at the same time. And that's maybe where some of the rational optimism had to come from, because if you only look at the downside of everything that you could do that will make it fail, you'll just stop, because there's so many ways this fails. I mean, there are more ways it will fail than there are that it will succeed. So if you only focus on the negative, you've already failed, because you'll never get there, because you won't see the opportunity. And that,
What was the what made you jump into the industry you did? You're in the training space, you're in the threat sort of analysis space. Maybe tell people what the company is, and then how the heck you got into it, because
so the company
it's not the most logical path, I would have to say.
No,
per se.
Absolutely not. Like, I'm not a grand wizard genius who came up with this. I had to pivot and find opportunity and change my perceptions of the thought process. So the initial product, the initial launch was, so Archway Defense is started with the core principle of, with training comes peace of mind. The belief is that the more training you have, the more competent you are in something, the more peaceful you are in your life. Because like you've got a phenomenal medical background, way better than I'll ever have in emergency medical, emergency care, that side. When you were telling a story just, I think last week, where a very critical medical incident happened and your focus, get the job done, and everybody was okay. That's really what the inspiration of the with training comes peace of mind is, that the more trained you are, the more competent you are with the thing that you want to do, the more peaceful you are in life and the less stressed you are. So a huge piece of the initial direction was actually on faith-based houses of worship, because houses of worship during that time, the attacks on houses of worship were increasing pretty significantly. Large noticeable attacks, a lot of ones that didn't hit the news in the sense of just one person killed opposed to multiple people killed at a house of worship. And it barely, unless you looked at that local news element, you'd never find it. So it's trying to work with the houses of worship to get safety and security teams spun up, emergency action plans, stuff of that nature. What I realized is all that great idea, I had the business model, I had the product, I had the pricing, I had all this fun stuff. And then I learned that selling to houses of worship, every person you meet can say no. And no one actually knows who's the person who can say yes. From a sales cycle, you'll have 15 cups of coffee to get to maybe, which you'll go bankrupt. So during that time, so I'm basically donating my time to these churches, just helping them out. And then a SWAT team in Minnesota, they said, "Hey, Peter, we heard you're back in town." It's actually Bloomington SWAT. We have a video of this. I had a camera guy out because I'm like, oh, that'd be cool. We'll get a little content. Bloomington SWAT, who covers Mall of America, they called up and they said, "Hey, we heard you're in town. Would you come shoot with us? We have a SWAT day." I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love to." So I came out to the range, and then they're shooting. I'm like, "Hey, can we polish some of this up? Because you guys aren't bad, but let's get you to the next level." And there's some really easy stuff that we could polish. And they're, "Sure, okay." So had a great time. Then one of those SWAT guys talked to a different SWAT guy, and that agency said, "Hey, Peter, we heard you just shot with Bloomington. We've got a training day next month. Would you come out?" I'm like, "Sure." And I'm literally doing this for free, like $0, just helping out cops that are good dudes, because I'm working on my business, which is helping churches who can't pay. Great business. Phenomenal business.
This is brilliant.
Brilliant.
God had
Genius. Elon Musk level brilliance right here. Sarcasm. So anyway, long story short, those kept happening, and more police departments started asking if I'd come and train with them. And then the realization from what I learned from the houses of worship, and we still do stuff with churches, but honestly, we basically just donate all of our time. It's our philanthropic arm, if you will, or our charity arm, because we know they don't have any money, but if they want a security plan or work on something, we'll go help them out. So while I was learning that, with police departments, specifically state and local police departments, their outside training budget for most PDs is zero. They don't have it. Came across this guy at a SWAT conference. He was in the defense industry, in the gun manufacturing. He said, "Hey, what gun do you shoot?" I'm like, "Oh, I've got this one." He's like, "Well, do you want to shoot ours?" "Oh, sure." I shot it. I've got a video of the first time I ever shot this gun. I got done just ripping. It was one of the Surefire, like 60 round mags on it. You know, those double stacked wide ones. And it's in slow motion. You just hear the steel ringing and the gun is perfectly flat. I get off the gun. I'm like, that is amazing. And it was a JP rifle. So this guy, Mel, he makes me look like a petite little girl. Like, he is a monster. When he grabs your hand, my hand gets engulfed inside of him. He's that big of a human being. He was the general manager for JP. He said, "Hey, would you come out to the factory and talk to John Paul of JP and the head of marketing, Jesse?" Sure. So we started discussing this idea of, well, what about, I've got all these PDs asking for training. You want to sell to law enforcement. They should try your gun because it's phenomenal. Like, hear me out. Instead of just trying to go get a demo set up, why don't you just give me some of the demo guns? I'll go train. I'm already doing the training. I'll just use your guns and train them. And it's a way for you to get your guns in front of these guys. And they're like, so John Paul, phenomenal shooter, never military, never law enforcement. He's kind of staring at me across the table, very stoic man. And he's looking at me like, he's like, "Wait a minute, are you a marketer?" I'm like, no, I'm a trigger puller. He's like, "Oh, thank you." He doesn't, he likes shooters. All of his guys are competition shooters. He came out of the competition realm and he wants to be surrounded. So everyone that works at the factory is literally a shooter. If you're not a shooter, you probably don't work there because it's so ingrained in their culture of, we make guns for shooters. So anyway, that tipping point, another tipping point, turned Archway Defense into that vertical of Archway Defense into a pretty big portion of our business, where we travel coast to coast, border to border, training state, local, and federal law enforcement. It's 11 years actually. January this month, it's been 11 years.
So your business model, though, as I understand, is you're saying that they're basically sponsoring you to, and they get do they get a discounted rate on training? Is it cheaper to provide training when you have someone that's sponsoring you in a body armor sense, in a rifle sense, in a gear and tactic stuff? Like,
yeah, it's a lot cheaper. It's free. Our sponsored rifle course is free for all law enforcement. Any agency that signs up for the sponsored course, it said $0. All they have to do is provide the ammo and the officers in the range. That's it.
And what we're saying then is that they don't have an outside training budget to pay you, but they definitely have a gear purchase budget for equipment that needs to be capitalized.
Correct. And if you do the right thing, Zig Ziglar said, you help enough people get what they want and you'll get what you want. So instead of demanding that people value you more, add more value to them, and then you increase, that's the concept of increasing the pie for everybody, opposing to that greed of like, I'm not doing this until you give me something. Like, no, all of our instructors, I'm like, our job is to add more value to each one of our clients, whether it's law enforcement or we do corporate stuff also, add so much value that they would never think of getting rid of us. And it's worked. I mean, we're still here, which is...
It's a novel business idea because I've seen the training space and people want to be paid for their time.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, we have contracts like that too, because people, they like the performance, because it's not about my ego. It's not about my background. Even in you should come out to one of our courses, by the way. You have an open invite.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, you have an open invite. Any course we're doing, you have a slot in it, anywhere in the country. So you'll never have to ask. I'll just tell you where we're going, but I would love to have you see and actually jump in because it'd be fun. But we have other agencies that hire us on the paid side to conduct training, because the rare ones that do have a budget for it, they're like, there's a great task force, multi-jurisdictional task force, super busy guys, phenomenal human beings going after, it's kind of like a state-run U.S. Marshal Service, just going at hitting the worst of the worst. That's all they care about. The rapists, the murderers, anybody like that, that's who they go after, and they never stop. It's their list. They wreck a lot of cars, but they take down so many of these guys. But their ops tempo is so busy, and all these guys and gals coming from different agencies, that their performance on tactics and weapons aren't the best. They're doing great work, but so that one of those is a client. We do instructor development courses. Those are paid courses. So we do have that traditional tactical training company. But again, we're trying to add value, more value than they could ever pay us for.
You also seem to have this really natural synergy with people. So I've observed you. I'm just going to this is complimentary, but there's no other way to do it. I watched you walk around people, and people brighten up when you're there. And everybody doesn't have that quality. Is that innate? Is that new? Have you developed that in your business, or did you always do that with people?
I mean, I know the trigger pullers, and I'm guilty of it. You get a little frustrated, and you're like, I hate people, right? You've probably heard it from guys like, leave me alone, I hate
myself.
people. Yeah, no.
Yeah, like me.
But I question that dogma, because I used to say that all the time. And now I say, I hate shitty people. Like shitty, abusive people. I hate those people. But when you find good people, that like brightens my day, and I love it. And then I want to do anything I can for them. Part of that came in through the concept of remember your death, which is, I mean, it's at the center point of, like, even on my phone, memento mori, right? The remember your death, always keep your death in focus, because in the light of your death, or in the finality of your death, everything becomes so much clearer, and then you can enjoy the moment that you have. And that's helped me a lot, where you can see, as imperfect as I am, when you see someone else who's acting in good faith and trying to be a good person, you can spot that a mile away. And that type of person just lights me up, because I'm like, even if you're having a bad day, I want to try to make your life better.
How does that play into your business?
Well,
because you seem to monetize this in a way, and it doesn't seem like it's intentional per se, but
it's become so second nature. I mean, a little bit of backstory. Fact that most people don't know. I grew up in a family-run bed and breakfast. So think about that for a second. My folks ran a family-run bed and breakfast. So from the youngest age, I can remember mowing lawns, cleaning toilets, making beds. And it was this huge Victorian house, 7 rooms. Each room was named after one of the kids, which was kind of kitschy. But the breakfast piece made from scratch every single day. So I grew up in the hospitality realm, in a sense, and the enjoyment you get out of helping someone else or serving someone else, when it's genuine and you're not just doing it because you're trying to get a tip or something, kind of that Vegas sleazy, I'm helping you. I don't actually want to help you, I just want your money. But when you commit to helping somebody or making an experience that brings light in their life, that's a pretty cool thing. So we bring that to the range. Another great book, Power of Moments, actually. In this book, Power of Moments, totally changed my business, by the way. So I already had some of this already, but I've been refining it and leaning into it even more. But the book, Power of Moments, in Disney World, I think that's Florida, right? Disney World,
yeah.
The highest ranked hotel in Disney World, which you have all the major brands, all the Ritz and the JW Marriott's, everything. The highest ranked hotel with the most reviews. Just tell me what you think that would look like in Disney World.
I can't even fathom. I've never been to Disney World, so I can't fathom. But the best hotels I have just are the ones that provide the basic service, and they have really good people that are working there. They're like responsive at the desk, and they want to serve, and they don't feel like they're burdened by you being there.
You're spot on. Most people would go into like it's the Ritz-Carlton or some bougie hotel.
No, I want to feel welcome, and I want to feel like I'm not a burden to you. That's it.
Yeah, and having somebody genuinely want to help you, not fake, where they're like, anything I can do for you. And you're like, yeah, okay, this person isn't bullshit, especially you. anybody in law enforcement, especially with your background, you can spot a bullshitter in a millisecond. If they're sleazy.
And I used to be in sales for sure.
Correct. So in the book, The Power of Moments, I forgot the author, but the highest ranked hotel in Disneyland is actually a remodeled motel, which the rooms are average size. The finishing is average, and it has a classic U-shaped or something with a pool in the middle. And so a classic like Motor 6, Route 66 style motel, nothing special at all, but it has one thing that no one else has, and it's called the Popsicle Hotline. There's a phone at the pool where any kid can pick up the phone, and somebody on the other line will say, Popsicle Hotline, and a waiter will come out with a silver tray and like a butler and give the kid a popsicle. Stupid. Everybody would be like, this is a waste. You have to have somebody manning the phone. You have to have a butler dressed up, give a kid a popsicle. Like, this is dumb. But what it does for the parents is kids play at the pool. When they want something, they don't bug the parents. They go to the Popsicle Hotline, pick up, and now they feel like they're being waited on. You could have easily just put a freezer of popsicles out there and self-serve, but there's no moment to elevate that person's experience. And without that moment, it's not memorable. We remember stuff that is different, that is outside the norm. When you go through your day-to-day routine, the only thing you remember is something that broke the norm. So they create the power of moments purposefully, so that when the kids go back home, they're talking to all their friends about this butler who brought them out popsicles every time they picked up a phone at no cost.
This is the successful trainings that I've seen. There's always a competition so that people can have that moment of remembering that we either almost won or we won, whether it be individual or team. But there was a moment at the end that I'm going to remember. And it's like, yeah, I got a chance to shoot for the, let's say the modern samurai black,
Yes.
What is it called? What is it called? Black belt standards.
Yes.
His patch, Scott
think so.
Jelinski,
Yep, the
which are really
patch.
hard, by the way. Didn't we talk to somebody about that at SHOT together?
Where he took the course. Oh,
Like 5 times.
Yeah, he took the course like 5 or 6 times just to shoot that.
Right, because you have to be a member of the course. You can't shoot it outside of the parameters. So if you want to have that thing, and so he's created a moment. By the way, every one of those courses is like $400 or $500.
Yeah, not cheap.
No,
But-
I mean 100% worth it, by the way, but still.
And this is where it breaks my heart. Like, there are so many people that want training, and there are so many good dudes who could provide the training, but they rest on their, like, I did this cool shit, and I did this cool shit, and you suck. I'm like, dude, if you're an instructor, I've said this before, you are a servant to the person you're training. You're there to serve them. And if they're not better by the end of the day, you failed as an instructor. And you should look in the mirror and be like, what am I doing with my life? Because I'm not making these guys better. I'm just spouting off cool shit I did and then telling them they're a piece of shit. Like, that's not a business. You're not going to sustain. Nobody likes that. I mean, unless you're into like a sadist masochist where you just want to be insulted.
Well, there's no servant leadership there, right? There's no servant leadership aspect of it if you're not actually providing. You know, I always mention that the value of communication, there's TX and there's RX. It's the same thing you learn in your basic comms course. So for people to understand, transmission is important. That means you got it out of the radio to one side. The other team doesn't get it. Then you didn't accomplish communication.
No.
And training's the same way. And you understand that. It seems like a lot of people in that world do not. Having taken a lot of training, military, law enforcement, emergency medicine, if you are not conveying information to the other side for them to walk out and then perform it, that's your failure. And I know that you have that attitude. That comes from the thing I heard earlier where you said, like, you know, am I being the best version of myself, or at least am I aspiring to it? Self-critical.
Yeah, and it's
interesting.
It's sad because so many of these good dudes who could be having phenomenal, there's so many people to train in this country. We're not big enough to train even a fraction of them. And we're on the road nonstop training cops and even citizens. But I think it's the wrong approach. They're taking that military approach of like, I'm in charge, I train you. You can get away with that when somebody's getting paid to live there for months and just grind them down and get them better. But if you have an 8 or 16-hour course, you have to distill that into what are the tangible things that you can drive performance in that individual. And a lot of that mindset, or not even mindset, I would say the practical application I got off the tennis court with my dad. I would sit
There
as
it
a
is.
kid picking up balls on the tennis court because he's teaching. And at the time, I had no idea. He's teaching guys that are going to Wimbledon. And I'm a little stupid kid, like with a hopper, like, pick it. If you know tennis, the hoppers, and you press down and you get the tennis balls pushed through. No idea. But I'd sit there when I had nothing else to do and watch my father talk to these pro athletes. And I noticed he would always tailor it, whatever the lesson was, to what that person needed. He would never regurgitate the same thing. It was so hyper focused on that individual, what that person needed. He was so in tune with them. And by the way, he still coaches a high school tennis team to this day. He's in his mid 80s. The guy's a monster. But I I got a crash course in teaching at a professional level before I even knew I didn't even know my dad was a professional tennis player. I thought he just had a job that he played tennis. I didn't even know until I was in my teens that he was All-American, or that he destroyed guys that were on the circuit. And the only reason he wasn't at Wimbledon and the US Open and the French Open was he got drafted for Nam. So seeing that high class or high level instructor, it definitely unequivocally helped me in my craft. I don't think I'd be a tenth of the instructor I am today without that early guidance on how to talk to people and drive performance.
You said your family was a big Catholic family. Does your dad still go to church?
Every day.
Every day? Does it
The daily
drive,
mass.
does it drive the way that he instructs or did? And do you think that had any wear off on you?
On the faith piece,
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd have to, and here's why. If you're a believer, you see the inherent value of human life. You must. If you're a Christian believer, if you profess your faith, that has to be a tenet of it somewhere. So when you look at it from that lens of the inherent value of human life, and that the person you're teaching is another human who only has one life, and their clock is ticking just like mine, you don't want to waste their time, and you want them to help. If they're genuine, you want to help them become the best version of themselves. So I think it's that. And I've even heard my dad as a kid talking about his faith on the court during water breaks. So I have no doubt that was a piece of it, without a doubt. Yeah.
Do you think that's something that people are talking about more in this day, in this moment, in this time in our country than maybe previous? Because it wasn't a thing when I was growing up. And I imagine it wasn't for you either that often. But it does seem like there's more of it now. Or is that just where I'm at?
No, I think I was having this conversation with somebody in Boise, Idaho yesterday. The term of a great revival sounds cliche, but the benefit, hear me out, the benefit of the insanity that the world has seen over the past 4 or 5 years, the absolute lack of logic, of reasoning, of all these things, of all the social issues getting shoved down people's throats, the blatant lying, just deceitful practices on behalf of many governments, the willful supporting of people who are pedophiles, like just being okay with it. I mean, we still don't have Epstein's list. Epstein ran the largest pedophile ring in the world for elite individuals, and we still don't know who his clients were. We have a good idea, but those client lists are documented. We still don't know. When you're confronted with that, even if you're a left, right, doesn't matter. If you're intellectually honest, you have to come up with the conclusion that this is evil. That if you're willing to do that to a little kid, you're evil. And if evil exists, nothing in the universe can exist without the opposite of it. Darkness doesn't exist without light. Light doesn't exist without darkness. I I think that self-realization that this is evil, and we've even seen it candidly with our neighbor. So we moved to Montana, but our neighbor in Minnesota, after COVID, and I would call her far left when she was in Minnesota. I saw her at a Trump rally a couple months ago before the election.
Whoa.
Here's what got her. This is it. She's like, whatever they're doing, they're lying and they're evil. And if they're lying, she started clawing down the rabbit hole, and she's like, they've been lying about a lot of things, and they have, and not conspiracies, but the stuff that we absolutely know they've been lying about. And she's like, that is so evil, I can't be part of it. And if this is the side they're on, I want to be on the opposite side. And her and her husband and her family moved to Montana. We didn't even know. They're less than a mile down the road from us. We're neighbors again.
Whoa.
Like, wild. Absolutely wild. So that piece, I was on Michelle Tafoya, the sideline reporter for NFL, really famous. I think she was the first female NFL sideline reporter. She covered the Olympics, illustrious career as a reporter. Michelle Tafoya, and one of the clips that, you know how they always do like you do the same thing. You have a great clip that kind of encompasses the heart of the message, and you post that. Well, one of them was, we have to realize that evil is real. If you don't believe evil is real, and this was in regards to a school shooting, on what can we do to help protect us and stuff like that. I'm like, everybody I talk to, if you don't believe evil is real, I can't help you at the point you're in your life. Because once you accept that evil is real, then you have to say, what am I willing to do to protect myself and my family from evil? It's a logical sequence. But if you're not willing to say, everything is an abstraction, that it's not my truth or your truth, there is no truth, it's subjective truth, and life is just an experience, then why are you mad if somebody shoots someone? If there's no objective truth that is wrong, and that somebody coming into a school killing innocent kids, if that's just living their truth, how are you mad at them for living their truth? If there is no objective reality or morality, then you have no business having a conversation about why you want to defend yourself, because why should you defend yourself against somebody who's just living their truth?
There are people that can be completely dismantled with this type of thought process. And I think it's nice that you said it. I do it with the Socratic method pretty frequently. It's just like, where'd your values come from? Why do you think that's bad? Why do you think this is good? Why is this a good way to live? Where did it come from? It's always Christian inspired, by the way. It's Judeo-Christian. That's what Western people default to, whether they know it or not. But you can't beat them over the head. I love your statement about, if you accept that there is evil, you generally also have to take the converse of it. Exactly. You can't really believe one without the other.
Exactly. And then you see pure evil, and you're like, where can I find the most good? Where can I find the most truth? If the lies are evil, where is the most truth I can get? Where are people the most honest with me? And you generally walk into some type of Christianity at the end of the day. I mean, that's why a lot of big conversions of people who are agnostic, atheist, etc. at all, right? They walked into the road of Christianity because there is a capital T truth. There is good and there is evil.
Let's talk about protecting yourself from that, some mindset thoughts. You've done this with me on Dinesh D'Souza's podcast when we guest hosted. So we've talked about evil. The average person who's not a trigger puller, who doesn't spend the number of hours you do behind a gun or glass, there's got to be some things they can do to increase their awareness without turning into like a wannabe Delta operator everywhere they go. What do those things look like? Yeah, exactly.
So the first thing, once you get past that evil is real, right? Take charge of your own personal protection. I don't know if I did the stopwatch thing with you, but this is a really good one. If you're anybody listening, if you're trying to get somebody to engage on self-realization needs to change, again, great research on adult learning theory. Adults change faster when they have a moment, power of moment, self-realization of a need to change. There's empirical research on this, and it's at the core of our curriculum. We try not to make statements in training. We try to ask questions in training that elicit a self-realization of a need to change your behavior. And it speeds up training much faster. But so you say, hey, pull out your stopwatch or your phone, whatever, go to your clock, reset that. And then on 3, 1, 2, 3, press start. So there is just an act of violence at your home, or let's say your kid, an accident happened, they have an arterial bleed. How long is it going to take for somebody to get to you? And just watch the clock go. And we're at 17, 18 seconds. And as you watch the clock and you ask them the question, do you think the cops are here yet? Do you think the paramedics are here yet? Obviously, 26 seconds. No one's here. So my question to you is,
called yet?
Yeah, you might not have even called. And by the way, once this only starts once the incident happens, with the response is a different clock. That's further back in the sequence. But the question to ask at 45 seconds, the average response time for a priority 1 call in the US, depending on the jurisdiction, 3 to 4 minutes, give or take. So that's like infant not breathing, active assailant, something of that nature, 3 to 4 minutes, depending. Some are better, some are much worse, but 3 to 4 minutes. We're at 1 minute right now. So in that 1 minute, what are you going to do between the time something happens and the time the professionals get to you? Because they'll come. They will get to you at some point. But it's your job to bridge the gap. And what are you willing to do from a ultimate accountability of, I know I need to bridge the gap with these skill sets, and that would be medical, right?
Man, I'm having an anxiety attack thinking about this right now, because you're putting me back into a spot that I was in, a year and a half ago. Did I tell you the story about my daughter?
Yes, and I didn't want to take your story, and that was what I was alluding to earlier. We're at SHOT. I'll set the table. We're sitting at a table, great lunch, phenomenal human beings with us, and you told this story, and everybody around the table is just in this, like, if you don't mind.
It's real simple. That stop clock, you've got a few seconds when somebody stops breathing, especially a tiny little person. So my wife had just given birth. We had a home birth, which was pretty radical. That's part of my new life, is that we have a lot of distrust in institutions, just like you. I've worked in the government. I see what it can do. I don't have a lot of faith in it. So, I try not to make this about me, but this is, like I said, I'm having that, like my palms are sweating thinking about going back and doing this, because not having the ability to do that action would be the worst thing that I can imagine. Because I've been on the ambulance call where you show up and somebody's already dead. And it is a terrible feeling to be on a rig where you had the ability to stop something, but you're not there in time and they're already gone. And so in any case, my wife, she had to pee, took her to the toilet, helped her because she's, 12 hours postpartum. And I turn around, I look into the bassinet where my brand new daughter is, who is 18 hours or less old. And she was deep blue, the color of your screen blue. And that is a crippling moment for almost everybody. It doesn't matter how good you are. So I always tell people, and this is not something I've ever seen taught, but your first step on every emergency is panic. You're going to do it at some point. You might as well do it up front. Don't spend a lot of time with it. Yeah, but panic. So I did, silently. Then I started giving real calm orders to my wife. Open the doors, turn off the fan, open up the windows, turn on all the lights. I wanted every bit of light and warmth and capabilities, because when people die, they die cold. That's a big deal. And it was September, so it was still warm outside in Texas. Anyway, I grabbed my daughter. I immediately grabbed a bulb suction and I started getting to work. And I will tell you, she was 100% recovered by the time the paramedics, the so-called professionals, got there. And they are professionals. I don't want to say so-called. They're just not there right there when you need them, because you don't carry an ambulance in your pocket. I called them just in case we could have somebody be there with some blow-by oxygen, which I might need. But I had every bit of confidence that I was going to be able to clear her airway, and I did. And that was the second of my 4 children that I've done that with, because one of my other kids did that in the hospital, and I had a faster response time than there was a nurse down the hall, and I was still faster because I know what to do. But I mean, like I said, palpitations, I can still see my daughter being blue, and she's a beautiful little baby with no deficits as far as I can tell right now. But that could have been a life-altering or a life-ending moment for her.
But this is exactly the point, is you're willing to take on the burden. It is a burden of bridging that gap for your family. And I think from a man's perspective, that is the most honorable, or a parent's perspective, the most honorable thing you can do is be willing to get outside of what you do every day and learn something that can help bridge that gap. We're at 4:50 right now, 4 minutes.
Yeah,
50
no, I mean, my daughter's already okay at this point with that situation. You know, the acknowledgement, she was probably breathing with inside of 90 seconds. And so holding your breath for 45 seconds as an infant is not tragic. It's not great. You don't necessarily want to go without it when they weren't planning on it, but you have a residual. Even infants have a residual of 90 to maybe 120 seconds worth of oxygen. If I were to stop you breathing right now, you've got 2 to 3 minutes worth of dead air lung space that is going to still have some oxygen moving. You'll be declining. But I'm telling you, like, it washes over me, like, when I think about it, because it's one of those moments where I became a parent after I went and got those hard skills. I joined the military on purpose. I learned how to be a paramedic, and I learned every bit of it because I knew that there was going to be people's lives in the balance. If you're a parent, if you're a concerned citizen, if you're a grandparent, and you have time, what are you doing with your time? Why are you not getting better at this? Why are you not able to step in the gap when someone wants to come in and pull a gun on your family?
Yeah.
Or somebody falls and cuts themselves. You said arterial bleed. I immediately imagined it was a leg bleed. I don't know why, but I'm going to be dropping a knee right in the middle of the inguinal notch right there, and I'm going to be cutting off, and then I'm going to go get a tourniquet. I'm going to have somebody go get the tourniquet for me because I can stop the bleed with my leg and have my hands free to talk to them. I know what I'm doing.
But with training came the peace of mind that you're capable of bridging that gap.
That's right.
And
no, it's truly the case. You have to. So I had great coaches growing up, and I'll share this with you too. And this is something you're going to work into your training now. I know it. I had a guy named Jerry Heidenreich. He was a gold medalist, and he swam with Mark Spitz. So he was one of my coaches. I didn't deserve the type of coaches that I had. I wasn't good enough, but I did have really good coaches. And he had a law of swimming, but it's a law of performance at a high level. Are you ready? It takes tremendous effort to become effortless.
Yes. I love
the reps that you put in. He also said that practice does not make perfect.
No, absolutely not.
Perfect practice does.
Correct. Yeah.
So those were two of the laws of swimming that I learned when I was probably 16, 17 years old. I carry them with me because having a lot of reps is irrelevant. Nope. Having really good reps is important. Doesn't matter whether it's in medicine or shooting or tactics or being a father or having a disagreement with your wife.
Yeah.
All of those things. They're all relevant.
Yep. And I love the fact that you use reps. In business, we use reps. So it's not about a win. It's not about a loss. It's regardless of the outcome. This was a good rep. What did we learn? This was a good rep. Because if you just go through it and you don't learn anything from it, if you don't appreciate the process, like training, you'll never get better. And there's
a value in every cold call I ever made where someone hung up on me.
Yeah. Cold call.
It's a repetition of a technique that I'm going to hone. Right.
But it takes a lot of work to get to that point. And do the quote one more time from your swimming coach.
It takes tremendous effort to become effortless.
It takes tremendous effort to become effortless. Hold on, I'm going to write this down. I love that.
Just imagine a figure skater.
Yep.
When we see them on the ice, they look effortless.
True.
They're gliding, they're spinning. You think, like, God, look at that incredible perfection that this person has done with their body. You watch a gymnast and you're like, it looks like I could do it.
Yeah.
And maybe you could. If you had the number of reps, if you had the number of perfect practice repetitions that person executed.
Yeah, in the FAMs, we would say we're going to do this until we cannot do it wrong.
Same idea.
Same principle. You're like, the number of times we call it hijacking an aircraft you have to do, that you could do it in your sleep. And to screw it up, you would have to purposely think of how to mess this up. That's how diligent you have to be with that practice. I love that. I literally took a note, so I'm throwing that in.
And these are the things and this is why it's so important. Like, if you were to come and confront me with a threat, my first move is to go to my waistband and have my pistol out. I'm going to do that. That is my instinctive reaction. If you have somebody that stops breathing, I'm going to make them breathe. I'm going to move them into a recovery position. I'm going to get them into a neutral sniffing position if they're a baby, and I'm going to go to clear airway. I'm going to assess, and I'm going to do that immediately. I don't know how to not do that because I'm terrified they might die, including when they're on my own daughter. But I'll tell you this, it got very, very mechanical for me really, really quickly. where I could not be emotionally involved in it. And this is the other piece of it. You start taking yourself out of the equation because it's not about you. It's about doing the mission set. Anybody who's ever done a mission that's dangerous knows what I'm talking about. And or a mission that has a high requirement for success. You can't factor your feelings, your emotions, your discomfort into it because it's not about you. And I think that actually is a Christian principle as well, which is funny. I think a lot of these things end up being very.
Do you think
they
it could
go
go back to a servant mindset? I mean, think about the greatest servant of recorded history. Who would it be? I mean, if you took all of mankind's history, who would be the biggest servant, the most famous servant you could think of?
Yeah. How about the Son of God that goes and washes the feet of those people that were going to screw up and betray him and fall asleep on him just a little bit later? And he knew it.
Serving people food, serving people wine at a wedding when they were out of wine. The stories are about a servant. Mm-hmm. And that's where I keep coming back to that servant mindset because, by the way, a good medic, you are serving the person, you're saving their life. That is the coolest level of servant, professional servant who's in that flow state to save someone's life. Same thing with a cop or Fed. You might even direct action guys, right? Direct action. You're like, well, no, I'm a door kicker. I'm a whatever. You're a servant to whoever this person was about to go attack. If they were a jihadi, if they were whatever, you're serving Bataclan theater should it have never have happened. Mm-hmm. You're serving that element of the society who are lucky enough and have been lucky enough for the most part up until more recent time to live in a world where they didn't have to worry about any of this. They didn't have to think about this. Most of them didn't think about this. And even to this day, the concept when I talk about, guys, put a turning like an IFAC in your car, also in your kitchen, also in your bag or your purse, or they're like one in each. Like, if you're out of the house and you're out of your car and you're somewhere else, what are you going to do? Go back 20 minutes to your car?
Yeah, what is your option? I've got 2 IFACs in my minivan. I have access to a tourniquet in seconds wherever I am. And is that because I'm neurotic and I used to be a medic? I think so. Probably.
Well, and you're cool, but
that is a cool thing to do.
But you also have
You know what's really cool though? It's really cool when you put on something that is the most uncomfortable thing that anyone's ever had and causes an incredible amount of pain and you save their life. Here's the reason why I have a tourniquet everywhere. I'll tell you this, Peter, and you can use it in your classes. I've had someone bleed out for lack of tourniquet on me right in front of my eyes. And it is really traumatic to watch. When you've seen the entire volume of a human being's blood fall onto a floor in a surgical suite or in a trauma theater, I saw that happen when I was in Phoenix. It was before I became a medic. It was while I was in my training in my internship. And if I had worked at that hospital and if I had been involved in any way with that man, I would have been violent with the people that I saw because they didn't have access to a tourniquet. They couldn't find one. And that was never again the case. I almost pulled my belt off, even though they have a very high failure rate. He came in on a helicopter from the roof of this level 1 trauma center, was transported. And that's how recent, that was as recent as 2011, I want to say. That's way too recently for that to have happened. It better not ever happen again. The guy came in, he was a massive laceration from a car accident in his right upper leg. Okay. Femoral bleed. Positional, so every time he would move, it would splash enormous amounts of blood out. And came down the hallway, dripping pools of blood. And when he got there, I realized that nobody had done anything. There was no junctional tourniquet. They probably could have got a regular tourniquet on. And it was 3/4 up, right thigh. And it should have been handled. And nobody had any ability to stop it. And he died right there on the table. They were pumping blood into him and it was falling out of his body through a hose.
Because they didn't.
And when you've seen that, and because they didn't have a tourniquet. When you see something like that and you realize that even the professionals can screw up, it gives you permission to try. That's the big thing for me. And I wonder if you teach that at all. It's like my first instinct to teach people is always like, do something.
Yeah, we have
Take action. That's actually big for almost everything you do in your life. Take some action. It's better than no action.
We have the saying, find work and add value. For room clearing, for anything. If I'm over here, go find work and add value to whatever we're doing. If I'm doing medical, find something to do and add value to the situation. Find work and add value. It's opposed to just doing what I'm doing. If my gun's this way, I don't need your gun this way. I need you to go find more work to make sure that I'm not missing something.
It's just as simple as if my wife is manning the stove, then I can go and set the table. I mean, it actually applies everywhere in your life, it turns out. And that's a servant mindset as well.
Let's go back to that one. I love this. So my wife's a phenomenal cook. If it would be equivalent of people who don't understand the concept of your wife is cooking and you go in as she's stirring, you grab the ladle and stir with her, opposed to doing anything else that would help prep dinner or take care of the kids or get the house ready for setting the table, as you said. It's absurd when you think of it that way. I mean, outside of just messing with her for fun. But if you were serious, oh, I'm helping. You're not helping. You're go find work and add value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is because you think that the mission matters and you think that the other person there's a certain amount of trust you have to have in the people around you, which is also really important, by the way. You know, you can't do everything. We know that.
No, I don't know if you've ever been exposed to the, I think it's KEG. They renamed it every time, but Delta got the box on trust and competency on how they select on selection. So it's a 9-grid square: high trust, high competency, low trust on the bottom, low trust, low competency, high trust, high competency. Goes up, high trust, high competency, and it trickles down. They will take somebody at high trust, high competency. Those are the rock stars. You can trust them and they're really good at what they do. The next group they'll take, and the only other group they'll take, is high trust, medium competency.
Because you can train competency.
Correct. You can't train trust. And so high competency, medium trust, they're gone. They won't make the team. Simply because, they're good, but I don't know what they're going to do when push comes to shove and it's the team versus them. Yeah.
I know guys like that. There are people in the public space right now that I know have been evaluated that way, like that actual evaluation for tiered units. Mm-hmm. And they are big names. They are big conservative names. They're in the space. They are vying for positions in government right now. And they're high competency and they are medium to low trust because they're in it for themselves. That is the number one way to not make it onto a team of people. And unfortunately, a lot of people are conned by very high competency and they go, look how good they are. It's like, imagine having a team of all Hall of Famers and they're all assholes.
Nope. Done.
They are going to lose.
They'll always lose because they'll never work together. Ever.
Never. They're not going to be a team. They're going to be a bunch of individual rock stars, and that doesn't make a team.
You'll get cool highlight plays out of it because they'll try to do something to make themselves look good, but you'll never have any consistency on performance. No, and that goes into the trust piece of building that MAG, that mutual assistance group. And it sounds like tactical cool, but a MAG is a fancy word of saying build a healthy relationship with good people around you in your community. And they don't all have to be tactical. So you're asking about personal safety, security. They don't have to be the ninjas. They don't have to be all trigger pullers. Like, go find a welder, like an awesome guy who's a welder, and legitimately go be his friend. Not for usury, not for manipulation, but take an interest. If he's a intellectually honest person, ethical person, he's high trust. You never know. Just not even in like Red Dawn scenario. You might need a welder. Like, go make friends with a welder. That's going full circle. Why I am the way I am is, again, I know I'm going to die. I'm okay with it. There's as an Irish guy, the song, If I Ever Leave This World Alive, it's classic Irish dark humor, but we're not going to leave this world alive. And I've had too many years being miserable and angry at what other things have happened in my life or my perception of those, that I'm like, no, I'm going to change. I'm going to change and try to become the best version of myself, whether that's in emotionally, mentally, spiritually, performance wise, all these other things. And I'm not the best version of myself, but I don't think there's the destination. It's falling in love with the process of moving forward. And then trying to find people along the way like yourself that you make life way more fun when I talk to you, because always something in there. But that's what it's all about, man. Like, it doesn't have to be so complex. Training doesn't, gear doesn't, like mags don't. Like, just be a good oh no, that was a different group chat. Sorry, I thought you were in this one. There's a Southern Border group chat I'm in, different guys doing different things. And somebody commented on this person who will go nameless that made a very public statement about something. I'm trying to talk around it. But I simply responded, in business, I have a belief. Don't be a fucking douchebag. I'm sorry for swearing. But
it seems like a real easy business principle to go and live by, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and everybody's laughing, and they're all cops and military and whatever else. But it's like, it's really easy. Like, don't be a douchebag. If you make a mistake, own the mistake. My bad, mea culpa, mea culpa. I'm going to try to clean that up, whatever. But you get way further in life. I found that I get way further and I have way more fun when I find good people and enjoy their company.
Yeah, without an angle. It seems like there's a lot of angles that we keep seeing more and more now.
No, and I mean, if you want to find a way to fight, to make sure that you don't slip into the usury friendship thing, and I think that's a accurate term, usury friendship.
Well, usury is usually it's high rates of interest. It is a predatory lending is the usual way, but you're using it in a way that is funny. It's like user-y, which is a different. It's the same pronunciation, but you're using it in a way that it's actually not the way the word's written. But I get it. It's a cleverness. It's like a
little dyslexic mind going here, but the concept is using someone, and only becoming friends with them to try to get a freaking angle. And that, again, anybody who's been in a lot of interviews or interrogations, you can start spotting like, there's something that's back of my hair is sticking up on this guy. Like, he's trying to get an inch in on something. My favorite question after a meeting in business or anywhere is, what can I do for you?
You say it every time, by the way.
I try to be very diligent about that, because it's a way to audit, am I being genuine? Because if I'm being genuine, I will go out of my way to try to help that person with the thing they ask me to help them with. And I don't want
It's a good question. Throw it again for people, because I think people will adopt this. It's I believe that I do it instinctively. It's my instinct to find out, how can I help you? Yeah, because if I'm helping you, then you're helping me if I need it, but I probably don't need it. Maybe I don't need it. I don't know what I need. Or you're going to do things for me that I don't even know I need, and I'll benefit indirectly. I certainly don't do it with a goal in mind.
Nope.
Anybody who knows me, in fact, let me interject this here. We did an interview with Zach Shuffstall.
Oh yeah.
Right. We just did this at Vegas. So he was just in Las Vegas with me, standing there with Joe Altman. And he said, you can say a lot of things about Kyle, and I don't think he and I agree on everything. We're certainly not the same politically, and that's fine. I don't need to be. But the funny thing was, he said something that is exactly what you just said. It's the thing that I want on. I don't even intend to. I just come out like this. He said, he will offer to help you and never ask for anything in return. It's like, well, it never occurred to me to ask for something in return. It's not a quid pro quo thing.
No.
My job is just to do things that I can do. And you do it every time. I see it in you very overtly. It's nice. It's nice when someone recognizes that about you.
Well,
I recognize it about you. I mean, I clearly
that's
do.
Probably why we get along so well, is because, like,
we're constantly trying to help the other guy out.
Yeah, it's like, no, I'm going to help you more. I'm going to help. But honestly, like, the most enjoyment I've ever had out of all my business wins, out of all my personal wins, the cool trophies and awards and bullshit that's in a box, because I don't have a love me wall. Like, I've got a lot of cool stuff that I'm very proud of. It's in a freaking box in the closet. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The best moments of my life are when I've been able to legitimately help someone who cannot help me back.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't want anything from you. I'm not asking for anything. And they appreciate if it's appreciated, that's even better. Where it's like, thank you. And it's simple, thank you. and you help somebody get something or solve a problem for them or whatever it is, like that is fun. I even asked it to oh, it's so funny. At SHOT Show, we were invited up to Montana. The governor had a reception. So the director of revenue for the state of Montana, right?
Mm-hmm.
He runs revenue. He's the tax man for the state of Montana. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this guy. He's an old school rancher, just cool freaking dude, telling me his life story, talking about how he doesn't like taxes either. But he mandates that all of his people pick up the phone to their citizens and answer the call with the same level of care that they would talk to their grandmother. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that is a beautiful standard for a civil servant. Like, if you don't talk to them the way you would talk to your grandmother who you love, that's unacceptable to us. So at the end of this, we're about to leave, and I didn't even know I said it. I'm like, well, what can I do for you? He's like, that's nothing. I'm here for you. He was so taken aback by it that he's like, you pay taxes. There's nothing you can do for me. I'm like, are you sure? Like, personal life, anything? Because again, I enjoy it. I legitimately enjoy it.
It's really rewarding, and it's a great way to go out in the world. It will bring more enjoyment, especially like you said, that moment when you do something when they can never pay you back, and they wouldn't even know where to start, and you would never think to ask them for it. I like to do stuff and know that not only will I not ever get paid back, but also I won't even remember that I did this.
Yes.
It just wasn't even that big of a thing. It's just something that I did today, and it'll impact somebody down the line. That's an ultimate win when it doesn't even go on your ledger. You're like, that's just what I do. That's how I operate. I want to, yeah, I know you're thinking about it. Feel free to respond.
No, I love it. I'm telling you, and here's my challenge to your listeners. If this seems foreign to you, try it. Try to find a way to help somebody. And the key is help them without them knowing you helped them, and never tell anyone about it. And your life will be better.
It's a great secret to walk around with. We've got a couple in this house that have been, I try to share a little bit with with our locals channel, because a lot of the stuff that we're able to do is because they're out there supporting us. So it gives me the platform or the support to be able to even take more risk in that space. And that's pretty cool. It's definitely not for public consumption, and it shouldn't be. It's more like, thanks for helping do this thing. This is what you guys also did. So I like to take that along. So if you're not part of our locals channel, you can guys find that it's on kyleserafin.com. That's not necessarily a pitch for it per se, but if you want to be part of it, it's a really good group of people and doing really nice things. About 1,000 folks that follow the show, paid or unpaid, either way, we're happy to have you over there. I want you to look into your crystal ball. You're a pretty optimistic guy, but you're also a guy that sees a lot of evil in the world, and you train for the worst case scenario. What do you think's coming in the next, let's call it 18 to 20 months, 18 to 24 months? And what are maybe the two most tangible skills people might need to go and develop in their life? Not everybody needs to be a trigger puller, but everybody needs to figure out some tangible skills that they can work on if they don't have them.
I love that second part of the question. On what's coming in the next year plus.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking to a lot of police departments nationwide, like you said, border to border, coast to coast. They're preparing for certain types of threats. What do you think those things, without giving away, OPSEC, what kind of things should people broadly be concerned about and aware of?
There's a reasonable probability, I don't want to speak in certainty, a reasonable probability of large-scale terrorist attacks or inspired attacks within the U.S. as a byproduct of our porously, horrifically open border. There's, in some of the guys on the southern border sending me, I think I've talked to you about it, dog tags from Middle Eastern units that were dropped at the southern border in Arabic. I send shots to friends in the Middle East, and they're like, I know what unit or what country that is. I don't know why they would go all the way through and drop those before they make contact. Because if you were a political asylum seeker, right, you're a military person, you want to seek asylum, you'd want proof of who you are.
For sure.
But they're dropping them. So there's that element. A reasonable probability of Mumbai style or Paris style, Paris 1, Paris 2, Brussels style multi-site attack, where they go from place to place to place and try to overwhelm law enforcement. I don't think that's unreasonable to expect in the next 12 to 24. And this depends on where you live, the increase in spiraling and violent activity within certain jurisdictions. Unfortunately, the U.S. is not all the same. Fortunately, that what's happening in Chicago, New York, L.A., etc., you're in a different boat than people living in stronger pro-law enforcement, not just pro-law enforcement, pro-law and order and protecting citizens and putting bad guys away, whatever you want to call that. If you're living in an area that likes to put bad guys away and wants to take care of citizens because they're paying them to do it, you're in a different boat. Your risk profile is more likely on that active shooter, active threat, active terrorism at a larger scale. I think bombings are going to increase, unfortunately. We saw that with the January 1 had bombs in the car, the insane events at Trump Tower with that crudely constructed V-Bide. So bombing, then what you can actually do, I'm a huge proponent in the medical stuff. We already hit on that. Like, if you do nothing else and you don't want to take a course, go on flipping YouTube and learn, like, what is a tourniquet? How do you pack a wound? How do you stop bleeding? How do you clear an airway? And if that's all you're going to do, and maybe that's not the best medical advice, but it's better than sitting playing another round of Angry Birds or whatever you're doing, or doom scrolling on social. Go learn something. Be infinitely curious on, what, if my kid gets choking, how do I save them? Maybe you should know that. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. It's great.
Then the other one is, I think it's an underappreciated skill set, is how to win friends and influence people, how to be a super communicator. By the way, shameless plug for 2 more books that I love. Super communicators. When you need something, if you know how to genuinely connect with somebody, not from a manipulation standpoint, people shoot, move, communicate. If you want to go into the tactical world, right? Shoot, move, communicate. Communicate is as big as shooting, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about, like, how do I become a better communicator? Not just in my tactical emergency prep stuff, but in life. How do I become a better communicator? Because if something's happening at the mall, or nobody goes to malls anymore, but something's happening at the restaurant, and you don't know how to effectively communicate the severity of what you're seeing, or someone's bleeding in the kitchen and you're either understating it or overstating it, you are adding unnecessary stress and setting people up for failure because of your communication. So super communicator is a phenomenal one. Learn communication skills, sender, message, receiver, feedback, that classic communication model with context. You use the analogy of the radio transmit. You can transmit, but if they don't know what you're saying, communication didn't happen. Famous quote, Robert Bernard Shaw: the greatest problem with communication is the illusion it has taken place.
Oh, that's good.
It hurts. That one hurts. So build your communication skills. It'll help you in everything else anyway. And then build your medical. You don't have to go straight to trigger pulling. Trigger pulling is the last worst case scenario. Hope to God you never have to do it. But I would start with those 2.
Brilliant. If somebody's listening and they're associated with a police department, they're looking to get some training. If they're associated with a faith-based community that may have proximity to where you're at right now, and they want to do it, if they want to get some recommendations, where should they reach out to get in touch with you?
Yeah, hit us up on archwaydefense.com. That's archwaydefense.com. All social media at Archway Defense. If you're faith-based and you're not even around us, don't worry. We have some free PDFs, guides on how to set up your best practices, if you will. We'll just email them to you. Don't care. We're not making money off this. Just take care of your flock, if you will. Take care of that house of worship. If you're law enforcement, hit us up. We're sponsored to provide training for active shooter, active threat, active terrorism at no cost to your agency. It's that simple. You bring the ammo, the officers, and the range, and it's not a shooting demo. We're going to train and get you better. Sharpen the blade, I say, right? Get rid of the nicks, make you a better shooter. That's it.
It's awesome stuff. What's the best social to follow you on?
X. I mean, I hate Meta so much, but we're bringing on a new social media person. Up until I got out of the Fed, I didn't have any social media. I despised it, and it was only because of the company. Bringing on a new social media person, so we'll be ripping down some of the content, rebranding it, and cleaning it up so it doesn't look so hodgepodge. But X is probably X or Instagram. Those are the two biggest ones.
And that's the at Archway Defense.
Yep, both of them at Archway Defense.
Fantastic. Thanks for taking time to chat with me. I look forward to doing it more. You brighten my day. You're one of the people that make my day better. And I'll tell you the most interesting and unexpected sort of benefit of some of our little friendship is that you have reached out to me randomly and just told me for no particular reason. I have no idea what was inspiring it, but you just said you were proud of me, which is funny because, as I said, we've only met in person 2 times. And I was like, thanks, man. I needed that today. I don't know why you knew I needed it, but go tell somebody that you're proud of. Let them know that you're proud of them. That's a good thing for all the audience listening. Somebody needs to hear it. You know who it is.
Make sure it's genuine. Make sure it's genuine because people will know if you're BSing them.
That is the Sunday conversation. That's the sit down. We got to really hone in on this name, haven't we? Thanks so much for joining us on these Sundays. I hope you guys will share this throughout the week. If you liked what you're listening to, if you thought that this was a program that was enjoyable, I would appreciate it if you shared it in any of the places that you'd like to. If you want to take a clip out of it or a little cut and you say, hey, this really was meaningful to me, you want to share that on social media, knock yourself out. You have my permission. You can rip it any way you like. That's what we're all about here. Make sure you're following us over at rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin, where these go live on Sundays. You can follow me on social media at Kyle Seraphin, especially on X. And if you want to get this a day early, join our locals channel, which is kyleseraphin.com. Again, the replays are always available throughout the week on Apple, on iHeartRadio, and on Spotify, where I am now hosting. And you can find the video there without any ads or any interruptions. They are going to do our hosting for the future. Really appreciate that over at Spotify. So that's it for the day. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday or rest of your day, wherever you are listening to this. And we'll see you again at 0930 Eastern Time for the Kyle Seraphin Show. If you want to watch us live, you will not be disappointed. The best chat on the internet, I would say. See you soon. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.